I shoot for a lot of different kinds of clients, ad agencies, marketing firms. I shoot for hospitals directly for their advertising, as well as editorial clients, both locally and regionally and nationally. And there's a big difference between advertising and editorial. Magazines want custom photography, they want stylized things, they want a series of photos that hold together in a story. And advertising is more sort of product specific. It's driving a particular message. And a lot of, to be honest, a lot of hospital advertising involves stock photography, and it starts to look the same. Wherever you are, you can recognize it. And so what we're trying to do here, I think, with the magazines is we're not, creating an advertising piece that looks like a magazine, but rather creating a magazine, creating something that is branded on its own, that people will pick up and read. It's not trying to force a message down their throat. It's giving them an opportunity to engage in a conversation. So there is this sort of need for custom photography, for something with a unified style, for something with an editorial look, and obviously photography that is specific to the institution or the story that's being put out there. I'd be really interested to know, because just in work we've done, you come back to a community, you come back to a hospital, and you're back, the next quarter for a photo shoot, and every now and then you run into the people from the last issue. And it's really great to hear, I had so much fun on the shoot, and people have come up to me every day talking about the story, and it's interesting. And I wish there was a good way to sort of measure that and really get a picture, like a sort of satellite view of the ripple effects of these stories as they go through the community, because I think it's significant.
What that brings to mind is Barb's Restaurant in Zephyr Hills, Florida, and the breakfast crowd. And we found out through this particular patient's story that this crowd gets together, this little breakfast club, almost every morning. And so we showed up, and that was really a fun shoot, because it was not only this particular gentleman who was the patient in this story, but it was the 6 or 7 or 8 other people who are his extended family.
Right.
And they gather at this place, and it's part of their life, and then we kind of became part of their story too. Quite often you'll have a marketing department, whoever the institution may be, you'll have a marketing department that is really struggling with budget concerns. So the bottom line is it's always a challenge.
Right.
However, when you think about this, you think about what does that institution have that nobody else has? In many cases, it's their people. So their people are their most valuable asset, in spite of the facility and the technology and the machines and all of the equipment and the whatever. I think that a lot of times it's the people who are really their most valuable assets, right?
This goes back to another. I'll give you. There's the outside example, which is I do a fair amount of editorial photography, and on the local level, when I'm shooting an editorial story about a restaurant or a store locally, I always hear from the owner, they're so excited to get the story done because they know that one-page department story about their restaurant is worth 12 months of paid advertising.
Well, I think the point that you're making is that there has always been, for as far back as it goes, there's paid advertising. Anybody can buy an ad, but when it's when it's framed within editorial, it has that sort of implied editorial endorsement of the publication.
So that and I think just stories are more engaging than messages. Mm-hmm. And I was working with a client recently this was an advertising shoot. They're a small regional hospital with a new birthing center, and they're trying to get local, moms or soon-to-be moms to come to their birthing center rather than drive an hour to the big one in the next town over. Mm-hmm. And obviously advertising helps with that. It builds awareness. It works, but nothing works like a story. Nothing would work, I think, quite like the story of a mom who gave birth there and the experience she had. Those things are the most compelling messages I think you can put out there.
And
having that conversation is what does it.
Yeah, this goes back to Rich Luker's book, Simple Community, where he talks about the world not needing more messages and more information. What we need is more storytelling. And the stories that relate to people's experiences, our direct experiences, whether they be individual experiences or collective experiences, they're the ones that are going to stick long after advertising messages have been delivered and completely forgotten.
Well, I think also it's about, what's a big thing these days is sort of transparent communication and transparent business. And obviously with HIPAA regulations, being a hospital, you have to be careful. And that's sort of the beauty of the custom publication is you have this communication where you can be fairly transparent, but you can also completely control the message. You don't rely on an editor or a photo editor to catch things. You have control of the photography, you have control of the writing, and it's yours. But as far as the consumer is concerned, it's compelling content, it's a story, it's a magazine they're going to want to pick up and take home.
Yeah, and it's part of the process. As long as there has been journalism, well, almost as long, there has been photojournalism, and there have been good photographers to help those good writers and those good editors convey that story. So this is exactly what we do. In this case, it happens to be, I guess, what they refer to as brand journalism, but it is journalism nonetheless. Yeah. And so I cannot imagine a marketer relying so heavily on stock photography that they're really kind of
in this context,
diminishing the message.
In this context, it doesn't make sense. If you're not going to have custom photography, you might as well not do a custom publication, because you're sort of taking it out of the custom realm right off the bat.
Right.
It's like you might as well put stock writing in there, and then what are you doing? You're just producing an ad that you have to mail yourself.
Well, that's true.
This is the thing too. Is you look at these magazines and they're beautiful, and they're not so obviously branded with the name of the hospital. They carry their own brand, they carry their own identity, and it really is a different sort of communication. And I think sometimes you have to remind people of that. Like, it's not about making the logo bigger.